Welcome to another episode of Dad Up, everyone. Thank you guys very much for joining me. I'm excited for the guest I have on today because he and I have gotten a chance to meet, I would say probably over the last close to a year now. He's been working with me directly as it relates to my running. I hired him on, what was this, Jeff, back in January, maybe?
I think so.
January, maybe later December, something like that, as my running coach because I am motivated to do things. I am motivated to stay in shape. I am motivated to go out and go running. But if I don't have somebody really pushing me to do it, it's very easy for me to go, I'll do it tomorrow. And so I thought the best way for me to do that would be to hire a running coach. And I've asked him to join me on Dad Up. He's a family man and he's got a huge career, not only as a professor, but also in coaching kids. So I wanted to kind of dive into his backstory a little bit. But my good friend, Jeff Messer, has joined me on Dad Up. Welcome to the show, friend.
Bryan, I appreciate it. Great to be here. I'm excited to do this with you and privileged to be invited.
Awesome. Well, let's dive right in because I've done a little bit of research on you just in preparation for this podcast, but I like to give my guests an opportunity to talk about themselves. So let's kind of dive into a backstory of Jeff, kind of, how you grew up and then how you got into the things you're doing as far as your running and your career. And then obviously this is a dad podcast, so I want to know about your family as well.
Well, thank you, Bryan. I appreciate it. And we'll try to be succinct and focused. And I'll start by saying that probably like many of the individuals who enjoy your podcast, many of your friends and my friends, high school sports was my entry point. At multiple levels, I was an athlete of modest accomplishment, cross country, indoor track, outdoor track. And that did a couple things for me. Number one, it gave me a set of transformational experiences, which have carried me through my lifetime. But it also ignited an interest in exercise and training, human performance more generally. And so as I left high school and transitioned to my undergraduate years, I continued as a student athlete, really enjoyed that. Again, some of my closest friends still to this day, two of my teammates from college, I text messaged with this morning after the marathon world record performance yesterday, just to talk about that young lady and what she accomplished. So again, very impactful experiences, very long-term friendships. And then a number of years after I finished my undergraduate work, I was working in the financial industry, Wall Street, if you prefer, and just determined that for me to work for another 30 or 40, maybe 60 or 70 years, because I like being busy and engaged, probably the financial industry wasn't the right place for me. So I took a flyer or a risk, call it what you will, and just decided to put it all aside and go to graduate school and study exercise physiology. And that led to an unanticipated path. The master's degree in exercise physiology was anticipated and planned when I made that transition, but to go on to doctoral study and mix in some biochemistry was not part of the plan. And I did it and it worked out really well. I've enjoyed it. And that led in turn to an interest in teaching and coaching. And I think more generally, Bryan, there's just an interest in serving. And so being university faculty, previously college faculty, that gives me an opportunity to serve young learners. Being a coach in my past, high school, middle school age student athletes, now primarily adults, occasionally some young learners. Really, the opportunity to serve is what drives me. I enjoy it profoundly. It gives me a great sense of self-gratification and just satisfies a desire to contribute. So I've been blessed that those early experiences as a young man in high school, for example, have led to a journey by analogy that's put me in this place where I can continue to serve. And now at age 62, I feel like I can work at least for another 20, 25 years because I love it so much. And I don't see any reason to slow down whatsoever. So unless someone I trust like you or maybe one of my senior administrators at the university tells me it's time to slow down and do something else, I'm going to keep coaching. I'm going to keep teaching for as long as I can.
That's awesome. Well, you certainly don't appear to be 62. I will say that. And I don't know if it's attributed to all the running that you're doing or, the youth that you're coaching, they're keeping you young, or maybe a mixture of both.
No doubt. Probably
and,
both.
And what about your family?
So my story is a little bit different. I was, and again, the short version of the story, but I was 55 years of age when, for whatever reason, one day I just was working out. And as I finished a workout and took a walk like I enjoy after a run, I just realized I probably would never meet someone and get married because I hadn't in my first 55 years. and thought likely it wouldn't happen. And if that was my destiny, that was fine. And you can probably guess how that story ends. I met her the next day. So the next day I was running on an ultra-gravity treadmill at a physical therapy clinic in Phoenix, Arizona. And I saw this lovely young lady doing her professional work as a therapist. And we struck up a relationship. Got married a couple years later. And then about a month after we got married, and so at this point I'm 50, almost 57. About a month after we got married, she said to me, she wanted to have a child. We hadn't really talked about it much before we got married. And I thought, wait, I've got the energy to do this, and I want her to be happy. And she wanted to be a mother, and I thought I'd love being a father. So had my first and only child as a father now at age 57. So I'm 62. She's 4 years of age, and I'm that outlier, I think, as a dad at age 62 with a 4-year-old. But I'm loving it, and it's great. I don't know how to do it. I'm learning every day. But that's part of the joy. And so, again, probably not a typical story. But coincidentally, I'll add this very quickly. Coincidentally, if you've ever heard the phrase "the perfect storm,"
Right.
the gentleman who wrote that book that led to the movie, that is my college roommate. And my college roommate is also 62. And he's the father of not one, but two young ones who are of that age also. So I'm not alone. It turns out, coincidentally, my college roommate, Sebastian Younger, the famous author of The Perfect Storm, is in that same domain.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I mean, if your students that you're coaching doesn't keep you active, your 4-year-old definitely will.
That is a fact. There's evidence to support your assertion, my friend.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, my wife and I, we have 2 boys, and we had our boys relatively young. I was in my mid-20s and she was in her early 20s. And my older son now is 25. And my younger son has just turned 23. I'm 51. So, I mean, we wanted to have them a bit younger just because we wanted to have that energy that we needed to keep up with them. And here you are celebrating a 4-year-old running around. And even after you've been doing marathons and running and coaching and all that other stuff. So it's a testament to your energy and your fitness.
Well, you're nice to say it. I'm thinking toward the future, Bryan. I'm thinking already, and you've been through all these experiences, which I know nothing about, but I'm thinking about, for example, her senior prom in high school. And I want to be active. I want to be able to move around when she does that. I certainly don't want to be with her that night. I want to be there for pictures, and I want to know she's safe. But beyond that, I just want to be able to take in all those moments and enjoy them. And I want to be that fit, healthy dad who maybe doesn't quite look 75, because when she goes to her senior prom, if I'm still here, and I plan to be, I'll be about 75 years of age. So a little bit different than your typical dad who's sending his daughter off to a senior prom.
Yeah. Well, you'll be there, and that'll be exciting. That'll be fun. I want to talk to you real quick, and we'll dive back into your family a little bit. But when it comes to you coaching these other kids in the it's just you're basically running, right? Track and field or running cross country. What was the passion behind that? And the reason that I ask that is because for me, I coached my boys in all kinds of sports from the ages of 4 all the way up through high school. And so in the midst of coaching them, I've, by coincidence, coached thousands of other kids, that were on our teams. And what I enjoyed about it, or what got me into it, was just the fact that I wanted to be there to coach my boys. For you, that's a little bit different, because for you didn't have a child that was running that you were going to be coaching. So it was somebody else's child that you're going to be coaching. So what was the passion behind getting into that coaching endeavor?
Well, I think probably 2 things, Bryan. Number one is just a love for running. It's a sport that's been good to me. It's been a sport that I've always enjoyed. So there's running, and it has multiple iterations. Again, for a high school or a collegiate university level student athlete, there is cross country, there is indoor track, there is outdoor track. So the different iterations I've always embraced. But really, I go back to a word that I invoked just a few moments ago, and that word is transformational. The experiences, both the high school and university level, were so transformational for me. Again, friends now for 40 to 50 years since those high school and university days. And I thought, here's an opportunity to serve people in that most transformational period of their lives, where they'll develop not only friendships and experiences, but they'll also develop life skills, which will carry them through their future pursuits. And so I think of discipline, for example, and I think of selflessness, for example, as two skills or qualities or characteristics that can be developed and really enhanced or amplified when one is part of a team. So I thought this is something that I would enjoy sharing and helping individuals manifest in their young years, that understanding of how gratifying it is to be selfless, and that belief in yourself, the self-efficacy that evolves from being disciplined and understanding you can do what you might not have thought you could do previously if you're committed, if you have a good support system, and if you have people who believe in you. So really, when I think about the philosophies that drive me, it was just seamless for me to try it in coaching. And really, it was a try, Bryan, just to see how it went, and I enjoyed it. And at the risk of using a word which may give off the wrong connotation, there's a bit of an addictive aspect to it, but I use that in a positive manner. And you probably know that because you've done it. The best parts of coaching just pull you in, so to speak, because you want to be a difference maker and you want to serve. So again, I'm blessed that I've been able to do this. And now I do it in a different space. I have the privilege of working with people like yourself in a different space, but it fits my life because I can't go to a 3-hour practice like I could when I was a head coach at the high school level. I don't have that time because I won't take it away from my daughter, but I can interact 7 days a week with someone like yourself who is very efficient and organized and highly motivated. And when I have those qualities in a partner and a collaborator like you, there's an opportunity to do good work that makes a difference that's positive for both of us.
Yeah, yeah, it totally makes sense. I get that. Yeah, and what Jeff's referring to is every single time I'm done with my run, I send him a text and I give him my breakdown, my stats, all that kind of stuff. Even though he could probably look them up himself, I still feel like I have to be accountable. So I send everything over to him for him to review. I send it over to him via text, and then he gives me the appropriate feedback, which I appreciate. I have to say, I've had other coaches in my past, Jeff, that I have worked with, and you are the first coach that has been so attentive to me and really has guided me in what I feel is the most appropriate way to develop my running abilities and get better at running. You've been my first coach that has ever done that. I've been running for 20 years. So I mean, I've had other coaches that, I would send them information and it would be days before I would even get a response. And here I am already running 2 or 3 other runs after that last submission that I sent them, So for you, and the fact that I consider it bugging you, but I know that you don't consider it that way. But
No.
I appreciate it. I just want you to know that firsthand. I appreciate it. And the advice you gave me is great.
Well, I'm really gratified. And I mean that most sincerely, Bryan, because two thoughts emanate. Number one is that I don't know how you do it at a high level, you and I as partners, if we're not interactive. I know that I don't have the strengths to do it if I'm not interactive, and I'm not trying to not only solicit feedback, but also provide input so you can make the ultimate decision because you are the athlete and I am the coach. So the ultimate decision is yours. So I try to make that a unique value add. I want to be more interactive than any coach on the planet. That's my goal. And I mean that most sincerely. And the other part is that that it's just a source of enjoyment for me. I love developing the relationships, and I love the aspect of just trying to learn together, because it's always a challenge. And I use that positively because we're always seeking the best outcome for you. And you know it so well because you're the one who's doing it. I'm just counseling it. You're the one who's doing it, and doing it at a high level is not easy. Even if you're as highly motivated as you are. And so that challenge is one I really embrace. And when you get a partner like yourself who is highly motivated to do it, that sets the foundation. Whereas if you have someone who's really sporadic, and of course I've come across individuals who sought me out, they're sporadic in their commitment. That's difficult. But with someone like you, it's a pleasure. And again, I just embrace it. I welcome it. And I know it's not going to be perfect, but I know it's a continuous improvement endeavor. And that's what I really enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Coach. Yeah, I will say for my audience, if you are looking for a running coach, and I'll make sure that I put links in the show notes for him, that you can reach out to him. But I highly recommend. I've actually referred other people to him. I know you had conversations with some other people that I referred you to them or them to you, and he's amazing. He really is a good coach. And I have to say, I have been working with him since the very beginning of the year. And at that time, my average pace was right around between 12 and 13 minutes per mile. And now I'm down in the tens, sometimes even the high nines, which has been tremendous for me. And some of my running buddies that I do hang out with, they're like, how in the world are you getting that much faster? And I go, hire a coach. Because they don't have one. I said, hire a coach. So, but yeah, it's really cool. I want to touch base on something though, because of your experience. Can you share like a memorable moment from your coaching experience that highlights the impact that you've had and the guidance that you've had on your students' running journey? You have a,
Well,
you have a,
I can share a recent one, Bryan, because high school cross country is the only sport at the high school level in our nation, to my knowledge, that has a true national championship every year. In other words, high school football. Some of the best teams in the country annually emanate from California. I can go down a list: St. John Bosco, Mater Dei. I mean, so many iconic programs. At the end of the year, though, at the end of the year, best 1,000th best. That's always voted. It's voted by USA Today or some such other organization, maxpreps.com. High school cross country, in an event sponsored by Nike, has a true national championship. And so I have family friends who I've known for 20 years, long story short, and they sought me out about a year ago and said, could you provide some counsel to our young son? He's had 3 coaches in 3 years, and there's been some volatility there. They're good people and good coaches, but there's been that lack of consistency in terms of one presence that really is consistent. So again, long story barely short, I was able to work with him as much a friend as a coach. And he actually won the Nike Cross National Championship as an individual this past December 2023, and then ran a sub 4-minute mile in high school 6 weeks later.
oh, wow.
So, and again, for me, it's not so much the outcome, but if you had asked that young man 6 months earlier if he could envision either, much less both outcomes, he would have said absolutely not. And so I think part of this, I call it belief paradigm. I think particularly with young individuals, Bryan, reshaping, redefining a belief paradigm is the most important part. And this comes from someone who studied physiology for 30 years and believes in the science of running and tries to stay well-versed in evidence-based science. But I think with regard to young individuals in particular, those are the most gratifying moments when you can just totally shift that belief paradigm and make them understand that they can do more than they ever would have thought possible. And then if that in turn can leverage them to greater future achievements. He's now at a university on the East Coast with a full athletic grant and aid, so he won't pay for his undergraduate education, and he'll get a free education over 4 years. He's on a great team with a great group of young men. That's the most gratifying part for me, when they can leverage that to great learning and great future experiences. And that's relatively recent because it did happen in one case, December of 23 at the cross country national championship. And then in February 2024, I visited him up in Boston when he ran 3:59 for the mile on a February evening.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. Remarkable. And I can't, Jeff, I cannot imagine running a sub 4 mile.
Neither can I.
I can't even picture it. And yeah, well, that's great. That's awesome. What about some of your other students? I mean, when you talk about this, let's just say what strategies do you use to motivate your young athletes? And how do those strategies differ when coaching maybe your own daughter? I know she's young, but
That's a great question. And I may need counsel from you here because it's interesting. I'm not a gentleman who lives his life with conditions. And the one condition I asked my wife for, the only one I've asked her for when we got married and then a month later decided to try to have a child, was that if we had a child, that I wouldn't be his or her coach. And it's not because I don't think I'd be necessarily okay, Bryan. I just don't know that I have the skill set to separate the two. And I've been in it for so long. You would know about this, and you probably do it really well. But I've been in this for a long time, and I've seen parents try to coach their sons and daughters, and occasionally I see it work out really well, and oftentimes I see it work out not so well because the coaching comes home, and the young person is challenged to assimilate that when dad or mom, in particular dad, stays as coach once they come through the door. And so I don't know about strategies for my daughter, other than what I want to do is if she goes into an athletic domain or sphere, I want to be a great fan. And I hope she'll be around great role models who will just empower her and teach her and care for her. In terms of the people I do work with, one of my one of my beliefs, Bryan, is relentless positivity. Relentless positivity. And it relates to a question which has always helped shape me. And that question is, what does it take to break you? And my answer is there is no breaking point, right? We have adversity, a run that's unusually fatiguing days after a marathon, right? We have challenges, all right? I have young learners at the high school age who, for example, go through a workout and it's a tough workout and they can't understand it. They think every workout should be great. And they also think every workout has to be great as evidence of them becoming better. And so I think relentless positivity is one aspect of it, and that's part of belief paradigm. I think the understanding there is no breaking point, that any adversity is an opportunity for education and growth. I think that's really critical, to not let adversity become negative. Don't waste a moment that is an adverse moment. Make that a teaching moment that is a growth moment. So I try to take foundational principles like that and just infuse those into my teachings or my learning experiences with the young people I coach and the adults I coach. And I try to remain consistent in philosophy, consistent in my positivity. I think that consistency for an athlete is critical. And so I try to model that each and every day.
Oh, that's so good. Really good. And yes, I could give you some advice as far as coaching your daughter goes. That's a decision. Honestly, Jeff, that's a decision you have to make. And for me, it was very simple. My decision became made because of my upbringing. I played a lot of sports, and my parents were not involved in the things that I did. I can count on one hand how many different things that they actually came to and watched. Most of the time I was riding to my soccer practices, baseball practices, water polo, swimming, wrestling. I was riding to all those practices with my friends' parents because my parents couldn't go or didn't go and I had no ride. So my thinking back at a very early age, in my high school years especially, was like, when I do have kids, when I'm older and have kids, I want to be able to be there and guide them as best as I know how. Am I going to be a good coach? Do I even want to coach? I don't know, but my plan is to be there. And I'll never forget my my older son. He was 4 years old. We were walking up to sign him up for T-ball, and at the table, and the coach, the guy that was signing us up, said, "Hey, do you want to coach?" And I said, not this time. I want to kind of watch and see how things go. I know baseball, but I've never coached before. And he looks me dead in the eyes, Jeff, and he goes, "Dude, they're 4. They're going to play with grass. Just teach them to run the bases and catch. That's all you got to do." And I said, "All right, well, maybe I'll consider the assistant job." Well, I took the assistant job, and the head coach that was supposed to be there ended up having something come up with work where he could no longer be the head coach. And all the parents are gathered around and they're looking at me, and I'm the assistant coach. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm the new head coach. And that's kind of how it started. And like I said, I've coached thousands of kids since then, from the ages of 4 all the way up through high school, and have loved every minute of it. How I've separated it though, Jeff, that's a tricky one, because I have made it very clear to my boys, and they knew this growing up, but I made it very clear to my boys. First, I asked their permission. Do you want me to be your coach? Because if they say no, if they want to do it on their own, they say no, I'm okay with that, and I'll step back. I'll just be the fan. But most of the time, until they got into their later years, most of the time it was yes, I'm fine with you being the coach. So then my second statement to them was, if I'm going to be your coach, when we're on the field or on the basketball court, we're at the, coach, the game or the practices, you are only to refer to me as coach. You are not to refer to me as dad. You are not refer to me as hey, you're refer to me as coach. That level of respect has to be developed and maintained throughout practice or games, because that sends a message to other kids. So I need you to have that respect for me, and I'll treat you just like I treat any other players. I'm not going to give you any special treatments. I'm going to treat you like any other players, and I think that's fair as well. And so they did. When we were out on the baseball field, it was coach. I was not dad. Now, when we got in the car and they wanted to talk about how things went, how the game went, how practice went, I would say, am I talking to you as coach, or do you want me to talk to you as dad? And they would tell me, no, I want you to talk to me as dad. And I'd put my dad hat on and I'd be like, okay, here's what I think went on. Here's what I think you should do better. Okay. Well, the other thing that I used to encourage them to do is at the end of every practice and every game, I always had my boys go to the other coach, the assistant coach, one of the other coaches, and say, what did I do great? What do I need to improve on? And what should I work on at home before the next practice or game? So they
That's
would
good.
thank them. They
That's
would
good.
thank them for volunteering. They would thank them for running practice or honing the game, and say, Coach, what did I do wrong in it today as far as my ability? What do I need to work on, and what things should I work on at home before the next practice or game? They did that every single time, and they didn't ask me. I made them go ask another coach because I didn't want to have that influence. You know what I mean? So
I do. I think.
those rules were set in stone, and they were in place for all of their lives. And trust me, there were moments, especially when I got one of my kids who's acting up and he's playing goofball, and I've got to bench him, right? I've got to pull him out. I've got to pull him out of the game, sit him down, and have one of my other coaches go talk to him and say, hey, dude, you need to chill. And then he's looking at me going, Dad, why are you pulling me out? No. Correction, coach, why are you pulling me out? Coach, why are you pulling me out? The other coach is going to explain it to you. Now, the only person that I had to deal with in those situations really was Mama Bear on the way home, because she was in the stands. And she was going, why'd you pull him out? And I was like, well, he did this. He was doing better than this kid and this kid. Okay, well, I'm the coach, and I elected to pull him out because he needed to calm down a little bit. He needed to get set straight. And after a quarter or two, he goes back in. He's fine. But you have to set those boundaries. And there was too much of the daddy ball that I witnessed, and I hated it.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if I end up calling you in like 6 to 8 years, because first of all, I'm interested to see if my daughter even tends toward or trends toward an athletic space as opposed to some other co-curricular focus or foci. And then if she does tend toward an athletic endeavor, will it be running? Her mother, my wife, is an avid runner, Bryan. I mean, she's good for 40 more miles a week. She's a half marathoner. So my daughter sees these behaviors more so from my wife. And so there's some evidence she might gravitate in that direction. And what would be interesting is if a coach at a program in the future ever came to me and said, hey, I'm aware of your background, would you like to be an assistant here in a program that my daughter decides to be a part of? Then I'd have to ask those hard questions. And I'd start, to your point, with my daughter and just make it easy and ask her yes or no. And then if she said no, that really makes it easy. And then if she says, yes, I'd like you to be a part of it, then I've got to go back to the head coach, I think, and say, how do I fit in a manner that helps the team without compromising anyone in the program? So if you get that unexpected call in 6 or 8 years and I'm begging for counsel, you won't be surprised to see my name on your cell phone.
No, I'm all for it. That would be awesome. Yeah, that would be awesome. I'll tell you one quick story. We were at a very intense basketball game in high school. My son was one of the varsity players, and he was happened to be sitting on the bench at the time. I was the associate head coach, so there was a head coach and then associate head coach, and he and I, at the end of every half, we would talk about, okay, who are we putting out there to start the second half? And at the time, my son was sitting on the bench. He had been sitting on the bench at the end of the second quarter. He wasn't the group that was in there finishing up the first half. And he comes to me and he goes, Bryan, who should we put in the second half? And I said, well, I think you should leave the same guys that finished the first half. I think you should leave them in because they were getting us back in this game because we were behind. They're getting us back into this game. It's a bit of a climb, but they're slowly chipping away at those points and getting us closer to tying this game up. So I think all 5 of them should be starting again in the third quarter. And later on, after that game, he goes, all right, I agree with you. Later on after that game, the coach came to me and said, I'm really proud of you. And I went, for? He goes, you could have very easily said your own son needed to be in the starting. I said, it's not about my son, coach. This is not about my son. This is about a team. And if my son doesn't understand that, then he and I will have to sit down and have a conversation about that. But this is a team game. This is a team sport. And you got to put what's the best medicine that's out there. You got to put them out on the court. And at the time, my son was not playing well. And so that meant he did not get to play, period. And I had no problem doing that, making no problem, making no issues with that decision. So It's just the daddy ball thing just never flew with me. Just never did.
Well, it's a great story, and I, I hope I can take that counsel and just keep it in my mind, so to speak, in case something like that ever comes up. But I think I can. And it also reminds me, Bryan, just of the impact of team sport and how important it is to be a part of a team. And without digressing, let me just say quickly that as someone who, for example, enjoys college football and now lives like you do in the era of name, image, and likeness, I worry about the nature of the team at the university and college level. And if that concept is in some way, shape, or form slowly being disintegrated, at
Right.
least diminished. Whereas at the high school level, I still see sport as so pure and so transformational. So again, I'm interested to see how this all plays out, and I appreciate what you say. I can guarantee you, because I listen well and take lessons very, very vividly, and I can put them away, so to speak, as Jerry Seinfeld would say, in the vault. And so I'll put those in the vault and call upon those if there's a time in the future. But I am fascinated in that regard to see which direction my daughter goes in, and just what captures her passion, athletically, non-athletically. It'll be fun to see, and you've been through the journey, so you can understand my excitement and anticipation.
Yeah, no, it'll be exciting. Whatever decision she decides to make. I mean, that's one of the things that we did with our boys is like, look, outside of school, you're going to do some other extracurricular activity because
Mm-hmm.
we want you involved. We want you being social with other kids and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have to be sports. It could be anything else. Our boys just naturally gravitated towards sports. But for your daughter, hey, you're right. It may not be running. It may not be softball. It may not be any of those other sports. It could be something like dance. You know, she may be into dance, or maybe acting, or maybe an instrument, which would be great too. But whatever those endeavors are that she may or may not choose to do, I would highly encourage her to choose to do something. You as parents highly encourage her to do something because it just kind of breaks the space of the school, you know, and gives her something outside of school that she can really appreciate and enjoy.
Well, if we ever have the opportunity to meet face to face someday, I'm going to make sure you meet my wife too. My wife is quite the visionary and planner, and I'm sure she'll have a plan for my daughter, which will probably include at least some element of co-curricular involvement, and I'll support that certainly. I let my wife and defer to her as the visionary, and I try to be the support person. My goal, and hopefully it's not unrealistic, Ryan, is whatever that path, whether it's to be a dancer or in the band or be a student athlete, whatever that goal is. My goal is to be at every performance or game activity. I want to see if I can be flawless and be there every time, and then be a quiet presence that just sits in the stands or sits in the audience and just cheers relentlessly. If I can achieve that, I'll find some contentedness. And really, for me, and you know this better than I do, as I said to my wife when we made this most recent move, it's interesting how it changes. Age 55, I'm single. All I have to focus on every day really is myself and being a servant. But I'm still focused on myself at some level now. I make decisions, and my first thought is my first criterion is my daughter safe and is she happy? You know
Yeah.
this because you've been through it, and it's interesting how it just simplifies. It doesn't dilute; it just simplifies to that as a first and defining criterion, and then you build the other criteria above that, like where would she be happy, or how do we do this to make sure she is happy, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Let me ask you one more question, Jeff, before I let you go. This comes specifically to, you know, if we're talking to other parents, what
Mm-hmm.
advice would you give to parents who want to support their children's maybe athletic pursuits without putting a ton of pressure on them? Because I've seen it where kids are just, you know, they get burnt out because parents are putting so much pressure on them of chasing these athletic pursuits. And so I'm asking you, as somebody who's coached kids many years, what advice would you give to parents that want to support their children without putting that pressure on them?
So it's a great question. I don't know that I have an answer, Bryan, but I have a response. And it goes back to when I was coaching at the high school level, where I have all these young individuals, age 14, 16, maybe 18, but typically age 14 to 17. So I would meet with the parents at least a couple times a year. And we would have our annual parent meeting, our preseason team parent meeting. And one of the things I used to state, particularly in my latter years, as I became a little more versed, having coached then for 10 or 15 prior years, is I would always send the message very simply: you parent, I coach. So you make parent decisions. Don't try to make my decisions for me. I make coaching decisions. I shouldn't try to make parenting decisions for you. And let me give you two examples. I'll always encourage your son or daughter to get great sleep at night, because sleep allows you to recover from training and adapt to training. But I don't make that ultimate decision. You do as a parent. Go to bed at 8 p.m., go to bed at 10:30 p.m. That decision is yours. I can just give the general encouragement. And what you can do for me is encourage your children to come to practice and give their best effort. But you let me worry about the effort when they're there. You let me worry about the workout. You don't need to coach them, just encourage them. And so I try to define both as a philosophy and with example, the idea that they parent, I coach. And if we do that, if we honor that boundary or those boundaries, then we actually serve the young learner in the best possible way. Because when we cross those boundaries, whether it's a disagreement, whatever it might be, if we cross those boundaries, the person who probably suffers is the young learner, the student athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have no basis to even tell ourselves we're good parents or good coaches, because we're compromising a young person's experience. Now, candidly, did that always work? In most cases, it did. But it seemed like, particularly in the latter years, as I got closer to 2020, Bryan, and parents became more active in general, and you've lived through this as a coach, as they feel like they have more of a voice by default in their children's athletic experiences. Did I have more vocal parents who might disagree or who might offer their opinion when it was unsolicited? Absolutely. Absolutely. So, again, that's why I'm not sure I answered your question. It's just a response. And I always encourage parents now, even when I talk to a high school age student athlete, just as someone who might offer counsel, I tell them, I'll speak with your son or daughter. And if I need you, I'll reach out. You don't have to check in with me, right? I'll check in with you. So I try to make it clear that I'm not being disrespectful, but I'm trying to do what they asked me to do, which is to help a young learner. So that's the best I've gotten to, Bryan, even if it's unsatisfactory. That's where I am right now. And I mean, I have coaching colleagues all through the country. I have a group of 40 coaches I share my training with every week for free across the United States. And so we collaborate, we interact, we text message. And I still don't know that we have a perfect solution to this. It's always a work in progress, hopefully never a work in regress, but that's the way we do it.
Yeah. Well, yes, you're always going to find that situation, that issue with parents and their students. Parents want to. There are those parents that want to live through their child's eyes, so they're going to try to guide the coach and give the coach their advice and what they think should be best for their child. But at the same time, their job is to cheer. Their job is not to coach. Their job is to support their child and cheer. And I used to have those same meetings with the parents of the teams that I've coached, and I would just say, look, you're up in that stands. You can cheer all day long for Billy or Suzanne or what, you can cheer all day long for your son or daughter, but please don't bark at them. Please don't give them instruction, because what they're doing is, when you're barking instruction or what you're barking that they should do in this next play, they're hearing two things, because they're hearing me in the seats, the benches, giving them instruction. And then as they're going down the court, they're hearing parent, dad, or mom giving them instruction. And now they're confused. Do I go against the coach? Do I go against my parents? And it just doesn't help the team at all. You're completely negating what is going on the court, because you're taking out the rest of the team and you're just focusing on your child. And so I've told parents, cheer, cheer, cheer. I'm all for it. But at the same time, do not coach. If you want to coach, please let me know if you want to coach, and I'll make sure I find a coaching spot for you. And you can come on and sit on the bench with us and be at every single practice and be at every single game and ride the buses with us and schedules with us and do all those other things with us as a coach. But until then, just cheer your child. That's what they want to do. That's what they want to hear. They don't want to hear orders being barked. They don't want to hear how they messed up. Just cheer for them.
Well, before I forget, Bryan, I've got to send this to you, and you may have already heard it. There's a gentleman, and it's only a 4 or 5 minute video, but I think the name is Frank Martin, formerly the coach for men's basketball at the University of South Carolina. Currently, if I'm not mistaken, the head coach for men's basketball at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, I believe. But in either case, great success at the University of South Carolina. He was in a press conference after a basketball game, and he was asked about the presence of parents. And he had two, I think, high school age boys, and he delivered 3 to 5 minute, almost a soliloquy, which is just gold. It is absolute gold. And I'll text it to you as a link, because you'll have a perspective on it as both father and coach. You'll have a unique perspective on it. I thought he was beyond brilliant. It's the best commentary on the role of parents and the role of coaches I've ever come across, particularly in 280 to 300 seconds of just brief commentary in a press conference, which was unsolicited. So I'll share it with you, and I'll be interested to see what you think of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, please do. Please do. Well, listen, Jeff, coach, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day, not only to give your insight as far as coaching and being a dad and being a parent overall, but I just appreciate you being on the show and speaking with me. Number two, I appreciate all the guidance you've given me over the last year and what you've done for me and my coaching, my running abilities, because I have to admit, earlier in this year, there was a lot of self-doubt in how much more I was going to be able to do or how many more of these marathons I was going to be able to run. And to think that, this is the first year in my running over the last 20 years, it's the first year that I've done 2 marathons in 1 year. So now I'm looking at doing 2 more in the next month that coach is probably not too happy about, but I'm doing 2 more in the next month. That's going to be pretty challenging. So that'll be 4 marathons in a year that I would have completed, which is the first time. I mean, it's crazy, but I'm doing it because I feel good. My body feels good. And I attribute that to not only my training, but the coach that I had behind me telling me how to train and holding me accountable. So that's a testament to you, Jeff, and the guidance you've given me over this year and how much I greatly, greatly appreciate it.
Well, right back at you, sir. It's been a privilege. It continues to be a privilege. And I will tell you that even with your audacious competitive schedule, you've shown a combination of physical durability, which is sometimes rare, as you know, in our sport, to have that physical durability combined with mental tenacity. And I think that's your uniqueness, that you've got both those qualities, and that enables you to actually not simply have a conversation about, but really to think about and actually to execute 3 or 4 marathons in a calendar year. Again, by any objective measure metric, that is audacious at any age. And by the time we get to December 31st of 2024, you'll just say done. So I commend you. I know it's not easy. I'm glad I'm part of the journey. And I'm also going to argue that based on that combination, that physical durability and that mental tenacity, that there's so much you can do in 2025 and beyond as long as you continue to enjoy the sport. So I'm glad you're invested in it. And I'm glad it self-gratifies you. So that's a great combination. And again, for me, it's just a privilege to be part of the journey, sir.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Yeah, 2025, folks, I'm telling you, he and I have already talked about it. Like 2025, when that hits, we're going on even a more regimented training program where he's going to make me the fastest man on the planet. That's what he's going to do. No,
I'm in, my friend.
He's got some ideas for me that would help me increase my speed and get me to where I can really compete in a marathon and do well. So I'm excited for that. But Jeff, one last thing before I let you go. If my listeners, my viewers wanted to learn a little bit more about you, look you up, maybe reach out for coaching services, what's the best places for them to do all that stuff?
So, Bryan, they can either go to Run Doyen with the second word spelled Doyen. Run Doyen is the group through which I work and contract. They're welcome to reach out to me in that manner. And that's probably the easiest way because I do that work through Run Doyen. If they want some informal interaction, they certainly can reach me at Augustana University. I'm now on the faculty there. And so Dr. Jeffrey Messer, also known as Jeff to my friends, they can also find me there. So I think I'm easily accessible via the internet, but Run Doyen is probably the place to start just to make it most expeditious. And I certainly will reach out and respond within 24 hours at the latest.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'll make sure we put those in the show notes, the link in the show notes. Trust me, I reached out to him on Run Doyen, and I had a prior experience using Run Doyen with another coach that didn't quite work out. Our schedules didn't quite align up. And so I reached out to Jeff, and it's been a blessing. I'm so glad that I found Jeff and have been working with him now for almost a year. So thank you again, Jeff, for being on. I appreciate it. I really do. And I'm looking forward to continuing our friendship and our coaching training journey.
As am I, my friend. I appreciate the opportunity, Bryan. Wish you a great day. And as always, be good to the body and give it plenty of rest.
Awesome. Listen, guys, it's been another episode of Dad Up. I want to thank my good friend, Dr. Jeff Messer, for being on the show with me. He's my coach, my running coach, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with him. If you guys want or are needing a running coach, either for you or maybe your child, definitely go to Run Doyen. You can check him out there. The links are in the show notes. You can go there and sign up and message him, and he'll get back to you, and you guys can work something out. But for the most part, if you have not yet subscribed to my show, please make sure you do that so you don't miss any of the awesome guests that I have on each and every week. And as always, I look forward to seeing you all on the next episode of Dad Up. Wow, another amazing episode in the books. So much was shared, and I'm truly grateful my guest was able to pour into you to help you elevate your dad game and really dad up. Make sure you bang that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. And while you're here, please don't forget to leave me a rating and a review. I always appreciate the feedback. And one last thing, don't forget, your role as a dad is one of the most important roles you have. So if you need a little help or have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me on my website at daduptribe.com or at my Instagram page at Dad Up Podcast. Until next time, everyone, Dad Up.